Welcome back to AM Northwest. It's the inside story of how a cross-country team that hadn't qualified for a state championship in decades became a record-shattering national powerhouse. Here to share his story, we welcome the author of Beyond Fast, how a Renegade coach and his unlikely high school team revolutionized distance running, Sean Brosnan. Good to have you with us, Sean. Coach Sean.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
You bet. First, let me ask you, Renegade coach, what made you a Renegade coach to begin with?
Well, I guess that's kind of how they might have coined me. I just, listen, I always tried to do whatever I could for the kids that I was coaching. It was, they were my priority. The boys that I coached and then eventually the girls that I coached in order to reach that success. So I guess I was kind of known for just doing whatever we had to do in order to reach our goals, and obviously all within the rules and keeping everything safe. But it was something that I'm proud of, and it worked out in the long run.
Well, you grew up running, right? Your dad was a runner. You had uncles who ran. I mean, you knew about running. Just it was in your body, in your DNA.
Yeah, as a young kid, I was, my grandfather and my dad were both my youth track coaches, and they exposed me to track and field at a pretty early age. I was going to big meets in New York City, Milrose Games, the New York Games, in the city, also outdoor track and field. And as a young kid, 5, 6 years old, so I was around it my whole life, and maybe it was just a natural progression for me to coach and want to do that, and it ended up that way, and history took care of itself, I guess.
Yeah, you started as a volunteer coach.
Yeah, I was a volunteer coach at a small Division II school in North Carolina. And I, had a really good experience there, and just kind of got my feet wet and trying to figure out where I wanted to end up, or, go from there. And then somehow I ended up at Newbury Park, and, ironically, it wasn't on purpose. I had to move to a certain part of Southern California with my wife, who got a really good job there. And I was like, hey, why don't I give high school a try? And I ended up ultimately, moved on from high school after that. And even before that, I wasn't a high school coach. But the time I was there, I took it pretty serious. And, I wanted to try to build the best team I possibly could.
And while you were there, you led them in state championships 2018, 2019, 2021, and some incredible athletes along the way that you essentially created or helped support them in their endeavor.
Yeah, when I first got there, it wasn't known as a traditionally great running school, especially for distance, even sprints. And I just figured, hey, if I can get 100% commitment from everybody, then I was going to give you 110%, and we could reach those goals. And again, history took care of itself. We broke multiple national records. We were #1 in the country for 4 years straight, and we really, we did some pretty powerful things on the cross country course and on the track. And I think for these kids, though, and even beyond, I think it echoes what they do in life. They put a lot of hard work in, and they made sacrifices in their own personal life in order to do what we did, and I think it showed.
Traditionally, track coaches have the kids run for length, like how far distance. They do it for distance, but you kind of veered from that kind of thinking.
Yeah, we did a lot of different, I say, unorthodox training. We did a lot of speed developmental work year round. We would start, I guess, anaerobic stuff earlier than most people or most coaches and most programs would. And that's something that, I took pride on, and the coaches that I surrounded myself around before I was coaching at Newbury Park, to kind of learn not the secrets of the trade, but the trick of the trade. And, everyone has their own little niche and things they like to do and don't do. And, being unorthodox and, going at it at a different angle with Newbury Park in order to be the best team, I think it worked out. But, it was a little bit of a risk. And, it's not just about putting in long miles every day. It's about doing all the little things too. And that's what we made sure we did.
Because it's definitely a mental game as well as a physical game, right?
Yeah, mental is a huge part of it.
Yeah.
We actually even worked with a sports psychologist, a great sports psychologist in Southern California. And, we worked with him as a team. And I always told my guys, I said, you got to be open to everything, and as a coach, I do too, because there's a lot of times I think coaches don't admit that they make mistakes. And, when an athlete runs poorly or doesn't perform to what you think their standards are, I think as a coach, it's your responsibility to say, hey, let's figure it out together. And I think that's, I think when the kids trusted me and I trusted them, and then you have this, ultimate ultimately good relationship and bond with the athletes. And the sky is the limit, and that's truly what I believe.
You talk about Nico Young, incredible athlete that you really helped to shape. So tell me about him. He went to the Olympics.
Yeah, I was out there watching him run. He ran the 10K at the Olympics last year. I think he finished 13th, 12th or 13th, right around there. But he qualified for the Olympic team at 21 years old. And so that was pretty incredible. He was probably my first star athlete. We had a lot of follow in his footsteps afterwards at Newbury Park, but he was the first national champion. He won the cross country NXN national championships up here in Portland, Oregon in 2019, and went to Northern Arizona University, just graduated, and now he's one of the best pros in the world. And he's actually an American record holder in the 5,000, was an
That's
Olympian
awesome.
last year. Yeah.
That must make you so proud. I do want to bring up something that you talk about in your book about your grandfather's death and how it impacted you, because that was a huge loss for you.
Yeah, my grandfather was a big part of my learning as a coach and as an athlete when I was younger. He went to every high school track meet possible, went to most of my college track meets too, and cross country races, everyone that he could. And he just influenced me a lot. And when he passed away, he was 87 years old. And I came up with this idea the night before and said, hey, I'm going to go to the track, my home high school track where he, coached me as a young kid, and I'm going to run 87 laps in his honor. And it was kind of crazy because I was coming off a fracture in my leg at the time. So I wasn't running very much, but I did it. And I had tons and tons of people show up because I put a post on social media, and it was just a great thing to honor him the day that we had his funeral. And it was emotional for everyone, from me and my grandmother and my family. But it was just something I can do to honor him. And he's still with me today in a lot of ways. And, I learned a lot from him along the way, and it was very important.
Oh, I bet he was so proud of you. That's so incredible. We want to tell everyone the book again is titled Beyond Fast: How a Renegade Coach and His Unlikely High School Team Revolutionized Distance Running. Sean Brosnan, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. All right, we'll be right back with more AM Northwest.